Welcome to Ordinary Teachers and Students. These bonus episodes, 1, 2, 3, 4 teachers, are concepts or ideas, mostly from psychology, that I feel will benefit teachers. Rather than giving you a 90-minute lecture about them, I thought a bite-sized episode like this would be more suited for busy teachers like you. My name is Alan Cheng, and I'm a life coach and university lecturer. My vision is to make life coaching a part of every school. Hi, today's one concept that I wanted to talk about was attention. The two things that I think you should know about attention would be that we need to pay attention to something before it can be encoded into the short-term and long-term memory, which means that if students are not paying attention to what you're saying or doing, then there's no chance for them to learn. Sounds obvious, but sometimes what we do in the classroom doesn't reflect our knowledge of this. And the second thing would be that we can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Multitasking is a bit of a myth. So you might be listening to this podcast while doing something else. Let's say washing the dishes. While you're washing the dishes, you might be actually on autopilot and you are actually listening to what I'm saying. But once that dish slips out your hand, your attention immediately switches back to the dish and you might suddenly ignore what I'm saying. If we also ask you to now pay attention and wiggle your toes, so your toes were always there, but you hadn't been paying attention to them. And so we need to remember that we can only really pay attention to one thing at a time. The three practical implementation ideas in terms of attention would be the first thing, using 5 senses to capture attention, particularly at the start of the lesson. So sometimes we might show them some pictures, which is great for vision. And I would just add to that by saying, if we can show them something that creates emotions. Okay, what I mean by that is, of course, something maybe funny, maybe they find it strange, or it piques their curiosity. Those are great because it makes students want to find out what happens next or what is going on. It really helps if we know our students' interests. So, for example, I know many students in Hong Kong like K-pop idols. If I show them a picture of a K-pop idol compared to the Beatles, they're much more likely to want to know what's going on. It's important, of course, that what I show them is related to what I'm about to teach them. So there can't be a disconnect there. In terms of touch, taste, and smell, I think it's much more subject specific. So there's some more practical subjects where we can allow students to touch, taste, and smell things. And that's great for getting their attention. But some subjects probably can't do that as well. I would also talk about sound, but I would say this is great for regaining attention. So I'll mention that later on. The second practical implementation idea would be related to maintaining attention. So we need to make sure what we're asking students to do is challenging yet achievable. This is important for both the top learners but also the weaker students in the class. So imagine the first question that you ask students to do is already very, very difficult. The weaker learners are likely to just give up quite quickly. So that's the difficulty, isn't it, of being a teacher, knowing the right level for our students. The second thing about maintaining attention is that we need to make sure students are doing more of the work than we are, particularly during lesson time. If you get students to discuss, brainstorm, work on ideas or work on problems, they're much more likely to maintain their attention than if you were talking for the whole lesson. It's almost impossible to keep their attention if you're talking for the whole lesson unless you're some kind of stand-up comedian. And the third practical implementation idea would be related to regaining it. So, of course, the ideal lesson would be we capture their attention at the start, we manage to maintain it, and then we can keep their attention for the whole lesson. But it's probably not realistic, and so there'll be times where students go off task and we need to regain their attention. Sometimes if you lower your voice and you speak very quietly, students suddenly get really scared and they're not sure what's going on, and you will capture their attention or regain it very quickly. or just going totally silent. Some teachers use gestures. They might hold their hand up, 2 hands up, hand over mouth. As long as you train them right from the start on in terms of what to do when certain gestures are used, they can be very effective. Or even clapping. So you might tell students that if I clap, then you have to. Something like that, it's great. And I've seen that used effectively in many different classrooms, particularly for younger students. Ringing a bell, so the type that you might use in a debate. Setting a timer. The ringing of the timer once time's up is also great for regaining attention. Or one little special trick I have is sometimes if students are very noisy, they might be doing work, like it might be good kind of noisy, but I need their attention, but I can't get it. I might switch off the light. Actually, in Hong Kong, like another thing you can do is to switch off the aircon during the summer, and that you'll get their attention immediately. But as with all things, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's not going to be effective. So it's about like using it at the right time. One last challenge for you, if you wish to have a challenge for regaining attention, is to try singing out the instructions. I read this somewhere. I cannot remember where I read it, but it sounded intriguing. I am not confident in my own singing to do this, but if you are and you want to try it, please tell me how it goes. So here are my 4 takeaways from today's episode. The first one is that attention is the absolute bedrock of learning. If your students are not paying attention to what you're saying, there's no point carrying on. The second thing is that not every lesson is going to be super interesting or captivating, but you need their attention for them to learn. The third one is for you to reflect. Have a think about what captures your attention and try to use that for your students. And finally, the fourth thing would be to experiment and see what works best for your class. Have fun with trying different ways because there's no one way. And so find lots of different ways to capture, maintain, and to regain your students' attention. So there you go. That's my 1, 2, 3, 4 teachers about attention. I hope I managed to capture and maintain your attention. Hope you join us again next time on Ordinary Teachers and Students.